What's going on? Welcome back to Financial Journey. So today I want to talk to you about Fisker. I want to go over some of the current data points, break it down on what's been coming out from the company itself, and go over everything else that you need to know. But first, make sure to hit that thumbs up and subscribe. I always greatly appreciate that. And with that said, let's get right to it. So based on Friday, it did go down 5.88%. There was a new 52-week and all-time low created at 37.5 cents. Although after hours, it kind of pulled down a little bit more, but still 37.5 cents. And despite all of that, though, you saw a lot of volume, especially for a Friday, which is kind of abnormal, but 83.02 million shares were traded, 64.5 is the average. So looking at the intraday, though, you can tell a lot of this had to do with algorithmic trading / shorting, because looking right here, these are all the transactions that have occurred on the secondary market above $100,000. So there was none on Friday, last being on February the 27th. Kind of just indicates that big money is still not really ready to commit into Fisker on the long aspect, at least. Although, if you kind of look at this, these are all the transactions that have occurred on the dark pool. Dark pool, very, very popular, and unfortunately, it's kind of popular with shorting and malicious activities. So this isn't a good sign. There was one transaction that did occur on Friday, so 189,000. You can't tell whether it's a buy or a sell because it doesn't actually show the bid or the ask in the dark pool, but still something to kind of keep in mind. Does validate the fact that Fisker is being manipulated behind the scenes. As far as recent news and SEC filings, so news, there was this that did come out. I'm not going to butcher their name right here, my apologies, but joins Fisker as Senior Vice President, Enterprise Digital Operations and Transformation. So pretty good stuff. This does and is very fitting to what Fisker is trying to accomplish in the short term. So I think that's a good thing. But aside from that, is this a reason to go out and buy Fisker? Not so much. So I still think that's a good move in the right direction, just not really something to go out and buy the company. But aside from that, though, there was a SEC document submitted right here. So that was submitted yesterday after hours, and that was more so just the results of their shareholder meeting. So you can kind of see right here. So yeah, both look like they were voted in favor, but based on the ownership of Fisker, you can see right here just a large amount of shares is being held by institutions. So of course they can kind of vote it how they see fit. 296.73 million is held by other, aka retail, and 5.18 million by strategic entities. So institutions do hold quite a lot of power because a lot of retail doesn't vote, unfortunately. But so again, something to kind of consider and just be aware of. Aside from all of that fun jazz, let's go over some data points. So on Friday, shorts did increase 2.67 million shares. 22.45% of the free float is being shorted, and that works out to be 101.35 million shares overall being shorted. Cost to borrow average is 27.01. So shorts over the last little bit have been taking advantage of, I guess, the volatility, because you can kind of see right here, just getting rid of all of this unnecessary stuff, you can kind of see shorts have been returning. It was roughly around 30% short interest to where it is now, so at 22.45. So interesting stuff. Again, is it really helping anyone right now? The fact that they are returning? Not so much, because I think they're just taking advantage and maybe gaining more and more momentum. That way they can double down harder if Fisker doesn't really improve their business, at least in the short term. Aside from that, so utilization is fairly high through Interactive Broker. Short availability does indicate around 1.2 million shares overall are being shorted. And it's always interesting to see exactly what happens on the intraday for a short. So the teal line always does show exactly what happens. So basically this right here is pre-market. So they were starting to increase, it looks like about 7 million shares or a little bit higher than that. So shorts were very, very active on Friday and probably did make up a good chunk of the volume. That is why it was a little bit higher. Aside from that, looking at good old options, $171,000 in calls being purchased versus about 100,000 in puts. Sentiment wise, kind of evenly divided. So 48% of all the options being done on Friday were optimistic. But then again, typically whenever shorts do increase, they hedge with options. So that's kind of a bullish bearish kind of scenario, and the reason why it's bullish is the fact is that maybe they anticipate Fisker to go up. Negative side is that they're hedging, so you won't really see a short squeeze, because in general, if Fisker does have a squeeze or just comes out with something random, aka maybe that whole Nissan kind of scenario, which there has been a lot of analysis on that since it kind of came out, that rumor. So maybe I was a little bit too harsh when I did my previous video, so my apologies on that. But this is why shorts do hedge, because in general, general, they can just buy 50-cent call options for very cheap. And if Fisker runs up to 70, well, guess what? Shorts don't have to cover. There won't be any short squeeze because their call options will cover that. So that's kind of the basis behind that. Looking at the call options that are being purchased, there's quite a lot around that 50-cent strike price, more specifically for March the 15th and April the 5th. So something to kind of consider. And looking at puts, obviously there's not really any advantage to buying puts when it is below the strike price. So this is why you don't really see all that much volume. As far as right now, so with it sitting at 37 cents and change, it is between this S2 and this S1. So 39 cents will be that next strong resistance point that you'll want to watch for going into next week. And keep in mind, on Tuesday, CPI data is coming out, so anticipate a hell of a lot of volatility. And then vice versa, 30 cents will be that next strong support that you'll want to watch for it to hold. A lot of wide gaps between the fib levels, so there's going to be a lot of volatility, so just be prepared for that. And just to quickly move over to some of the technicals and the other fun jazz that you kind of need to know. So on the actual chart right here, I do have a 1 day, 1 hour, and a 15-minute chart just to give you a good overview of everything. So on the actual chart, it is lower percentile of the Bollinger Band, below a lot of the key pivotal moving averages. Stochastic RSI has gone down quite a lot. You do see a bearish deviation, so the orange line above the blue, or whatever you want to call it. So that's kind of a negative. But one potential positive is that it is getting to somewhat oversold territory. And even if we do, for instance, throw in MACD, so a lot of people like to look at MACD, in general, that is also showing as somewhat optimistic. So if you kind of group all of this together, then things, it could, on the technical stance, it does indicate that there could be a nice reversal, potentially, of course. So with CPI coming out this week, so I'll just give you a quick overview of what that is showing. So looking on here, so for this upcoming week, just to go next week. So for this upcoming week, expectations on a year over year is 3.7 and month over month is 0.3. The Feds have already come out saying that in general, February data onwards, this is where they are anticipating somewhat better data. So again, if this is positive, then you could see that nice value rally that does occur with Fisker. So let me know your thoughts on all of that in the comments below. And why do you think, for instance, shorts have been returning, or at least taking advantage of the volatility and returning quite a lot of shares? So what's your thoughts on all that? Don't forget to hit that thumbs up and subscribe. I always greatly appreciate that. One final thing I just wanted to share with you, take advantage of this promo. Simply sign up for an account with 𝗪𝗧𝗛𝗏, throw $100 ad, and you get 5 free stocks. Each stock is valued up to $2,000. So make sure you take advantage of this. It is only up until March the 31st, so take advantage. With all that said, appreciate all of you watching.